First Ballot Podcast. Today we are breaking down 3 players you could not pay us to take in a redraft format. My co-host Justin here is going to kick it off. Who do you got first?
First things first, Zay Flowers. Love the talent. I think everyone is, same idea with Zay Flowers. We love the talent. We love the player. It's just the situation. We haven't been able to see that ceiling season. Last year finished as wide receiver 25, and that's the same season that Lamar Jackson broke the NFL, throwing for 40 touchdowns, over 4K yards. If Lamar has that kind of season and Zay Flowers only finishes as wide receiver 25, I mean, it's hard for me to make the case in my head that this year is going to be the breakout. This is the year that Zay Flowers goes crazy. He's a top 15 guy. If he didn't do it last year, I just don't see how he gets there this year. Um, I just feel like where you're taking him, the return on investment, like it's not a league winning pick. It's a safe pick. I'm fine taking the pick, but it's not going to win me the league. So I just see myself avoiding Zay Flowers, at cost in all these mock drafts that I've been in. How do you feel about Zay Flowers? Am I too, nitpicky on where you're getting him? I feel like at wide receiver 24, you're gonna get wide receiver 24 value from him, but Jamison Williams, there's other names there that I think could potentially win me the league, you know?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head initially, especially when you talk about what Lamar did last year. Phenomenal. And I'm not out here betting against Lamar Jackson. It's just I don't know. That's a historic year for anybody. I don't know how easy it is to replicate that. And then on top of that, you had Rashad Bateman, who did start to take a step towards the end of the year. He did get paid. You got Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews. I mean, there's just a lot of mouths to be fed over there in that offense. And yeah, I think at wide receiver 24, he doesn't have the same upside as a guy like a Jamison Williams. Like the boom of Jamison Williams to me, to your point, would be an interesting upside play, especially when I'm picking in that 24 to 32 area. So no, I'm with you there.
Yeah, I think like uh, for where he's going, it's a safe floor pick. It's kind of like Devonte Smith in a sense. Now, on the other hand, bring up Devonte Smith, AJ Brown goes down. Devonte Smith could actually win you the league. I think Mark Andrews goes down, Isaiah Likely goes down. I don't think Zay Flowers taking that big of a jump. I think they just lean more on that run game like they already do. Another thing to note, like 4.5 touchdowns is where he averages. Zay Flowers is about 4 or 5 touchdowns in the first 2 seasons. Not great upside wise. And on top of that, it for points per game, he was wide receiver 36 last year. So barely cracking, top 36 receivers in points per game. I just don't it's hard for me to feel comfortable taking him where he is just because I don't think it's gonna give me that huge upside, which is what I'm trying to shoot for in redraft leagues.
That's a great point. And they also, I mean, Hopkins is obviously at the end of his rope, but it is, they did add him. They did bring him in. It's
True.
another mouth to feed. Just something else to consider. I'm with you there. For my first guy, you could not pay me to take. It is going to be Michael Pittman. He's coming in with an ADP of 135. Some other players sort of in that area that I would be considering taking would be Keon Coleman at 141 or Rashid Shaheed at 147. Honestly, I think they have a higher floor than Pittman, and I think they both have a higher ceiling. Um, and then you add, injuries, terrible quarterback play, uh, potentially a new quarterback at the helm. Which, if Daniel Jones does play, okay, I probably prefer that from a fantasy perspective to Anthony Richardson. But last year, Pittman was bottom 15 in both points per game. I'm sorry, bottom 15 in both points per target at 1.5 and points per reception, fantasy points per reception at just 2.2. So all of those reasons combined, kind of why I'm fading him. But where are you at with Michael Pittman?
Um, just one of those guys that like I'm not really excited about in general. I think the Colts offense is they have everything but an elite quarterback, or not even an elite quarterback, a competent quarterback. I think that's the pitfall of that team. You bring in Tyler Warren this offseason. I think he's taken a lot of short routes away for other receivers. Adding in Josh Downs as well, who remains to stay open all over the field. Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson. I just can't really figure out who's going to be the number one guy here, besides Jonathan Taylor. Um, in this offense. On top of it, Michael Pittman, the back injury last year, something kind of know. It's a scary injury when you're talking about concussions, brain things, back things. I just don't really like get excited about Michael Pittman. People in that range that are getting drafted around Michael Pittman, I'd rather take a shot, maybe on, let's see who's going around Michael Pittman. Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Matthew Golden, Khalil Shakir. You could convince me maybe Khalil Shakir gets paid, takes a step forward. I'd rather take a shot on that offense with Josh Allen. Um, who else? Emeka Ibuka is going after Michael Pittman. I'd rather, have Emeka Ibuka on my bench until something happens, or maybe it happens earlier than you think, and Emeka, becomes a focal point of that offense. Uh, I kind of been out on Michael Pittman for the last couple years. I think we saw the peak of it. I don't think he's really, bringing us high in value.
No, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. And then also, you think about what the potential growth is of Joshua Downs. How
Right.
does Tyler Warren factor into this? A full season of Jonathan Taylor football. Like,
Yeah, the Josh Downs hype train has definitely left the station, and everyone made sure they're a part of that. I know it's been trickling into dynasty formats and conversations. People are higher on Josh Downs. I'm kind of just for redraft. I'm kind of staying away from the Colts in general. When you're drafting players just for a season in redraft, I kind of want to stay away from ugly offenses. And the Colts being at the top of that list. Next on players I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, a low hanging fruit here, Joe Mixon. Uh, let's be real, guys. I don't really care what you have to tell. You couldn't pay me to draft Joe Mixon in redraft. I think this is the cliff for Joe Mixon at age 29. Hate to see it. He's been in the league for years and always cracks that top 12. I think this is a season where we see the fall off. I mean, the injuries are stacking up. He's been a durable running back, but I think this is the straw that breaks the camel's back with the foot injury. People in the Texans camp saying it's a minor thing. He's not in a hard shell walking boot anymore. All this stuff, but all signs point to kind of leaning on Joe Mixon a little less this season, bringing in Nick Chubb. They draft Woody Marks and the receiving back that he is. And the Texans' O line is, shaky at best. Texans' offense line is probably, bottom tier of the league. We saw that with the QB play last year and Stroud, getting sacked as much as he did. I just don't really trust that offensive line, and I don't trust Joe Mixon's durability going into this year, which is like a crazy statement because he's been a durable back. But I think at 29, this is where we see, the fall off. And I just at running back 19, if he returns on that, and ends up running back 20, running back 18 in that range, I think it's an ugly road to that. I don't know how many games he's going to be on the field the whole time, and I'm just not really taking a risk there.
I think you bring up a great point. And with running backs, like when guys are starting the season with injury, that's never never a good sign. I would
Yeah.
be interested to see like how many guys who begin the season with an injury end up playing all the games or like over 90% of the games. But I can't imagine that it's most. And then you couple that with the offseason acquisition of Nick Chubb, to your point, and then you lose Laramie Tunsil, left tackle, in a trade. You make an already bad offensive line worse. uh, I don't know. I was probably higher on Mixon until the recent updates about the injury. But they did also draft Woody Marks, granted late. I'm not expecting a huge play from Woody Marks, but they also added Nick Chubb. So clearly they're looking for support in the room. And they already have Damian Pierce. So there might be more of a committee kind of approach from Houston than we've seen in years past. And I think that's reasonable to expect.
Yeah, great point with the committee. I think I was alluding to that with the Woody Marks and Nick Chubb additions. I just feel it's going to be shaky, especially if Joe Mixon's banged up. He's going before, all the those rookie running backs. He's going before Travion, RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson. I like taking a shot on one of those guys, preferably RJ Harvey with the receiving upside. DeAndre Swift's going after him, and that's just the running backs, kind of going after him. In that range, I'm still probably taking shots at receivers with upside. Redraft this season, I'm taking two or three running backs as early as possible, and then kind of ditching the position and filling in the rest as I go. And the way Joe Mixon's getting drafted at 51 overall ish, I feel like that's where I'm kind of taking shots at, receiver at that point. I think you're muted.
Great catch. We are seeing some guys like the Alvin Kamara's of the world who are playing seemingly effectively at 29, right? But you also have to remember guys like that, specifically Kamara, have never had an 1,000-yard rushing season. Like these are not guys who are getting the volume of their carries through the middle of the field. It's like pitches out to the outside, get out of bounds a lot. I think the way Mixon plays is just a little bit more physical. So that sort of age factor, I think, might be something that surfaces here. For me, it's the second player that I've got, DJ Moore. Just nothing I'm particularly excited about with DJ Moore, and he's coming in an ADP of 60. At 61, you can get Devontae Adams. 68, you can get Xavier Worthy. 72, you can get George Pickens. You got to think significant target competition over there with Odunze, who was a first-round pick, who is now you're going to expect to take a step. Loveland, first-round pick this year. Burden. They do also have Cole Kmet, who was another Pro Bowl tight end at one point in his career. DeAndre Swift is a pass-catching running back. Um, it's just a lot of mouths to feed. And then on top of that, we're hoping Caleb Williams takes a step. He's super talented, but it's a new coach. It's a new system. He might take a step. It might not start great. And so even if DJ Moore is playing well, it might be out of his control how effective he is. Last year, he had 1.7 fantasy points per target. That was bottom 8 of all wide receivers who are eligible to be graded, and 2.48 fantasy points per reception, which was bottom 10. Just not very efficient.
Yeah, I think DJ Moore, him dropping, it's like I'll play devil's advocate. There's like some value to be had with DJ Moore. I just think you're playing Bears roulette at this point in the offseason. No one can really put their finger on who's going to be what in this offense, and it all falls down to Caleb Williams taking a step at the end of the day. So anytime you're making a bet on these Bears, pass catchers, you're making a bet on Caleb Williams taking a step, which I think is fine to do. But you got to be right when you make that pick, whether it's Odunze, DJ Moore, Loveland, Luther Burden late, whoever is going to flourish into that number one role here for the Bears. I don't mind DJ Moore where he's going. I just think that there is definitely a chance and a high chance that Rome Odunze becomes that number one role with Loveland, getting more targets than we think or we imagine. Loveland getting drafted in what the top 12 picks of the NFL draft. Um, Something's got to give there. Obviously, Ben Johnson has a plan, and I'm not sure how much DJ Moore is involved in that plan. Um, with that being said, who we got next on Do Not Touch? I'm probably staying away from, lo and behold, Brees Hall. I think everyone's kind of joined this bandwagon once Aaron Glenn came out and said that they're going to go with a committee approach to the season. Aaron Glenn coming over from the Detroit Lions, where they're notorious for having a dual backfield, which was very successful for them. The Jets, how useful is a dual backfield? How many times they're going to be in the red zone? I kind of just see myself staying away from Brees Hall, mostly because the Jets are just going to be a bad team this year. And like I said, previously, I just want to stay away from bad offenses. I don't know how many red zone touches Brees Hall is going to get with, Justin Fields vulturing those opportunities. Justin Fields is notorious, for not checking down, to running backs in the past. Brees Hall in his contract year. So there is a chance they run Brees into the ground maybe, but with them being, behind in probably most of the games that they're playing this season, I don't know how much you're going to get from Brees Hall. Braylon Allen, only 21, 22 years old, probably is going to get the torch passed to him after this season. I don't see why the Jets would pay Brees Hall with the condition their team's in. It just wouldn't make sense. So this is probably Brees Hall's last year on the Jets, and he's out of there. And I think if that's the case, towards the tail end of the season, you could see Braylon Allen being that lone back there, because he's going to be moving forward. Where are you at with Brees Hall? I know there's a lot of talk and stink. Everyone's out on him. He's dropped down to RB14. I think RB14 is kind of where I don't think he drops much more, but in that range, I'm probably taking other guys instead of him.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about the one aspect of Brees Hall's usage this year that kind of intrigues me is just the fact that there's no receivers other than Garrett Wilson over there. So I'm wondering if just by force he's going to have to assume more of a pass catching role. But to your point, I mean, it's just a bad team. There's the Justin Fields leeching touchdowns on read options. There's probably the inability to move the ball. So yeah, new coach and Brees Hall could play last year. Like when he got in, he flashed, especially early on in the season. Like I would assume he's going to definitely get an increased role. And to your point, he's a young guy. So yeah, at RB14, it's tough. I mean, and I'm interested in a guy like a Caleb Johnson, right? I'm interested in a guy maybe even like
I
RJ
mean,
Hart or
Omarion Hampton's going after Brees Hall. Like Garrett Wilson,
that's
his
insane.
his his teammates going after Brees Hall. Jackson Smith the Jigba's going after Brees Hall. Marvin Harrison Jr., T Higgins, Joe Burrow's going after Brees Hall. Eh, I just when it comes to running backs, if I'm taking a shot, I'd rather wait for Omarion Hampton. I think he's gonna have a huge workload in a run first offense that is a better offense in general. It's gonna see the red zone more. Um, Alvin Kamara, that's when it gets shaky. I mean, Alvin Kamara's never been worse than top 12.
Right.
Maybe one occasion in his whole career. There's just names around Brees Hall where I'd rather maybe take a floor pick or take something safer than someone in the Jets offense.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm with you there for sure. Last guy for me that you could not pay me to draft, it's Mark Andrews coming in at an ADP of 92. Around that area at 96, you have Calvin Ridley at 101, Evan Ingram, 112, Juwan Jennings, and 117, Jaden Reed. Um, Now, the reason for me was more so rooted in the amount of regression that I expect potentially to take place in the passing game over there. Now, you couple that with an emerging Isaiah Likely. You got Zay Flowers, who you're expecting, again, technically eligible for a contract after this year, though he probably won't get it. Still, it's about time for him to start, showing what type of caliber of receiver he is. I would expect him to eclipse 1,000 yards for sure. And I just think between the two tight ends, it starts to get a little bit hairy when you're trying to figure out if Mark Andrews can continue kind of what he's been able to put up. Last year, though, he was actually efficient. As much as this is, an anti-Mark Andrews take, it's not necessarily because of the player he is. I just think it's more to do with the offense. Last year, he had 2.31 fantasy points per target, which actually was top 8 amongst tight ends. And he had 2.76 fantasy points per reception, which was top 10 to 12. So, not as impressive at the tight end position, but still interesting. And then 11.3 fantasy points per game, which made him tight end 6 in that per game averages. So for me, that's where I'm at. But where are you at with Mark Andrews?
Looks like I'm out on Zay Flowers and you're out on Mark Andrews, so something's got to give here for the Ravens. I think one of us will be right in this situation. Mark Andrews, they bring him back. They could have got rid of him this season, and they didn't. They brought him back. So Todd Monken has a plan for him. Likely is dealing with an injury that's he's gonna have to get surgery. He's supposedly gonna be back week 1, week 2, which I think is great. But let's say the Isaiah Likely surgery ends up lingering for the first 3 weeks of the season, and you got just Mark Andrews there. I think that's gonna bump him up a little bit. But lo and behold, at the end of the day, I doubt Lamar Jackson throws for 40 touchdowns again.
Right.
Even though Mark Andrews is a huge red zone threat, no matter what, I just doubt Lamar Jackson's going to replicate last year. And there's some stink on Mark Andrews, how the season ended last year, all that stuff. But uh, tight end in redraft, I'm personally not the guy that goes out there and tries to get, top end tight end talent. I'm always fine with punting tight end in my drafts and figuring it out later. Because if I don't have Trey McBride or Brock Bowers or that top 3 end talent, I just don't think it really matters at the end of the day. So I'm fine with avoiding Mark Andrews and seeing how it pans out.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. I don't think there's too much more to be said there. But just to your point about the tight end position, like you can always play the waiver wire game and play the touchdown hunting game where
I mean, look at
maybe
Zach Ertz last year. Like, people were picking
right.
up Zach Ertz, and he was, competent. It was fine in your tight end position. I think Tucker Kraft's going to be one of those guys this year where you just throw in your tight end position, probably gets you 8 to 12 points, and you're fine with it.
And
Um,
it's big, man. How you like what you put on like how you present Isaiah Likely in that first game against the Chiefs looked like an all-pro tight end.
oh, I remember after
I
week
think
one
he
last
is.
year,
It's a
Isaiah
usage.
Likely was like the most traded player in all formats, dynasty, redraft, what have you.
I think
Um,
he's legitimately an all-pro talent at the time. I mean, he's incredibly good at what he does, especially as a pass catcher. I think he's a more dynamic pass catcher. I think his frame is more equipped to pass catch. Now you could say the blocking factor for Andrews, how he can be used, it might set him up more in the play action game, whatever, whatever. There's some truth to that for sure, but I Likely's an intriguing player, man. He's an intriguing player, and I'm expecting him to take a big step in that offense.
I think Hopkins is going to get red zone looks as well, no matter how gross DeAndre Hopkins is in fantasy football. I don't think he's worth taking a pick on. He's probably going to be on your waiver wire, or he's, end of the draft type of pick, but he's probably going to take red zone looks away from people. I think me being out on Zay, you being out on Mark Andrews just goes to show, we're looking at some regression here for the Todd Monken offense, unless Lamar comes out and just does some Lamar things again. I mean, who knows? Something that someone who almost made my do not draft list, but I just didn't have the guts to put him on it. Wanted to touch on that real quick is Jaden Daniels, and it's not me betting against the talent. It's just where he's going in drafts. I mean, he's QB3, and we're talking redraft single quarterback format. He's going around 30th overall in one QB formats. I can't get behind taking Jaden Daniels that early just because you can get good quarterback value later. And I don't think going. Everyone likes to talk about sophomore slumps. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to be terrible this year. I think they do have 18 games of film, 20 games of film on him and Cliff Kingsbury's offense, which isn't that complex. I just people couldn't figure it out quick enough last year. I think, going into this season, they'll have it figured out a little bit more. And everyone likes to forget how the knock on Jaden Daniels going into the league was he takes big hits. He doesn't know how to protect himself, injury prone, he's thin, whatever, all this stuff. He was healthy all last season. He dealt with like a little rib injury, I believe. But he was healthy pretty much the whole season and played the whole season. And there is a chance that maybe he isn't healthy. I don't want to prey on anyone's, injury or anything like that, anyone's health, but let's be real, that was a concern going into his rookie season and we didn't see it, so everyone forgot about it. There is a chance, that's always on the table for any player, but yeah, Jane Daniels at 30th overall, I'm fine with taking a different player, you know, running back or a receiver in that range, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, something like that, and grabbing a QB later like Kyler Murray, who's falling, who still has rushing upside, or Baker Mayfield, who threw for how many TDs last year. I just think there's other quarterbacks you can take in one QB formats that you're still getting a decent return on value, and you can, get a different position there at the 30th overall pick that, Jane Daniels is sitting at right now at ADP.
I think I mean, Jaden's an interesting player too. It came out and had a historic season. Second seasons, we all know the trope of the sophomore slump, obviously, right? But I mean, it's kind of like the Lamar thing. It's like it was just such a great season. It's not even to say that he's going to be bad or not have a great year. It's just a great year still might not live up to the year that he put on tape last year and that he
Right.
put up as a fantasy prospect. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a terrible take. He is probably being overdrafted, and that's just more to do with how historic it was what he did last year as a rookie. For me, the honorable mention would have been Sam Laporta. He's going around 412. That is the 1 PPR Superflex ADP for redraft. That's just before Mike Evans, Alvin Kamara, Ted McMillan. I mean, even DJ Moore. I'm higher on all of these guys than Sam Laporta.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I think that one just kind of goes without saying, right? Like, ton of
Yeah,
players in that offense.
Ben Johnson leaving the offense. We all expect the Lions to maybe take
And
a little bit of
Tesla
this.
might. Tesla might get a little bit more of that slot work. I'm not saying he's gonna obviously take over Amon Ra or anything like that. I'm just saying he's a bigger body, bigger dude. He's 6'3".
Yeah,
I could
he's
see him
huge.
work in the middle of the field.
Right. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Like I said before, I'm notorious for punting tight end in my drafts anyways, and figuring it out later. Don't hate Sam Laporta. Um, Yeah, so this is players we wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, players we wouldn't, you couldn't pay us to draft. We each gave three in an honorable mention. Go ahead, comment, some guys you're staying away from, or maybe some guys on this list that you guys are actually drafting and want to make a case for. We're all just throwing stuff against the wall until it sticks, and hopefully enough sticks that we end up winning our leagues, right?
Sweet. Yeah. Good stuff. Um, dude, let me show you the updated version of the site real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I haven't done any crazy like marketing shit, like literally just read it, like just posting in forums, but people are like using the shit on the daily. One, two, three. There we go. I'm gonna share. Here, I'll stop there.